It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. It's the Jill on Money Show. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. How do we do that? Well, we rely on you to be part of the process. Here's what I'm asking. Can you go to our website, jillonmoney.com? Do you have a financial question? Then there you can ask that question. Just click on the Contact Us button. jillonmoney.com, contact us. And we ask you to give us some information about yourself. And, more detail is always better. However, the best is if you join us on the air. And if you are able to do that, you join us from the Capital One Bank Virtual Studios. If you can do that, then we can actually get deeper into the response and what we need to do to help you out. And that helps everyone out. Today, we are talking to Mike from Michigan. All right, Mike, what brings you to our airwaves today? What can we do for you?
Yeah, a couple years ago, we moved from Atlanta, Georgia up to Michigan to take care of my wife's dad, who was in his mid-90s. And we were a live-in with him. And the other members of the family were not that financially experienced. And so we had about the same size portfolio as her dad. Mm-hmm. And they asked us to give us some opinions and look in on the account. And what we found kind of astounded us. So I'm seeking a second opinion, what we found.
Okay, tell us a little bit about the client at hand, meaning your father-in-law.
So right now, 95 years old, retired FBI guy, been retired for a number of years, has a portfolio about $1.2 million. We found when we first took a look at the portfolio that his financial advisor had him in about 5% cash, 15% bonds, some of which were junk, and 80% in stock. And then it gets even worse. She had him in 25 mutual funds spread over 2 portfolios. And most of them were, A class or C shares, because we went to the FINRA website and took a look at these things. And so besides a high quarterly program fee of around 2.5%, she was also getting, paid from these funds as well. But it was the allocation that bothered us.
Tell me about your father-in-law's condition. He's 95 years old. Is he still kind of with it? Is he kind of like maybe not as cognitively on his game as he used to be? Where is he?
Yeah, over the past couple of years, he has slipped fairly well into cognitive decline with dementia. And so for a guy that would call his financial planner maybe weekly, he does not make any calls now. And for a guy who would open up any mail from his financial planner the instant it hit the mailbox, he really doesn't do that. So his son, my wife's brother, is the power of attorney and in charge of his estate. So he is not, to answer your question, he is not really making any decisions right now as far as his investments.
Is it possible, because I just want to point this out, this is a complete possibility, that your father-in-law is a badass and that, years ago, he said to the investment person, jam on that risk. He probably has a pension, right? He's a federal employee, so he has a pension, right?
Yeah, he has a pension of about $5,500 a month, and it used to cover most all of the expenses. What has happened is we have, after about a year and a half, we have moved down state in Michigan, and the family has hired a caregiver. It's covering most of the expenses. And to your point, when we asked the financial planner, what's the deal with the allocation, she said, well, this is what he wanted. I said to her, when was that? She goes, 10 years ago. So our point was, we asked her, how in the world could you be acting as a fiduciary because you haven't asked him that in 10 years?
So that's a problem. Is she a certified financial planner?
Well, she plays one in real life.
Ha! But does she have that designation?
Yes.
She does. Okay. A couple of things to consider. Now, your brother-in-law has power of attorney, so we can make proactive changes, correct?
Yes, and we have done some things, but not nearly enough.
Do we pay this financial advisor? Do we pay her via, you mentioned commissionable mutual funds? Is there any fee that is addressed beyond those commissions?
Yeah, she's clocking in at just over 2%.
Woo!
The part that just frosts you, she gets the 2%, she gets whatever she gets from the funds. And then when we've tried to make adjustments in the portfolio, she wants to charge us $60 a trade.
Of course she does. Oh, this is killing me. Okay. So first thing, do you know, generally speaking, we've got 25 different mutual funds. Are they all in the similar fund family? In other words, is she using all of American funds? Is she using all of, some label brand mutual funds that you would recognize?
I would say about half of them are American funds. The others are pretty well spread over a lot of different fund names. The one thing that we did notice is that in this particular brokerage or company, they have some of their own proprietary mutual funds, which are very expensive. And our thought is that she had 6 or 7 of them, and we couldn't figure out why she would use those from a fee standpoint. But then a friend of a friend pointed out that maybe, this company is famous for having sales contests.
Tell me about who is going to manage these funds in the future. Do you and your brother-in-law and your wife, do you guys want to do this, or do you want to have someone else do it?
No, what we have suggested is to move to a more friendly investment company like Schwab or Fidelity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lower fees.
Yep.
And probably will get better service. Yeah, he is self-proclaimed as not a financial whiz. The problem here is that he didn't want to move the money when his dad was more cognitively involved because he thought it would upset him. But now that his dad is not really that much with it from a dementia standpoint, there's really no reason in our mind not to move the money, except for one little thing.
Yeah.
He has his money with her too.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
He's going to have to deal with that. Because, is he a weenie? Is he because obviously, why would I want to work with that person who screwed my father-in-law? My father.
No, we went through a very simple explanation with him. We said, look, take $1 million times 1%, take $1 million times 2%. The difference is how much you're getting taken here.
We'll get back to Mike's question in just a minute. If you have a financial matter that's maybe causing you a little anxiety, or maybe you just want another opinion, go to JillOnMoney.com, click the Contact Us button, and we will be happy to help you out. We will be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we're going to get back to Mike in Michigan in just a second because we got to help the father-in-law here. What I want to tell you guys about the process of talking about money, whether it's about your money or a family member's money, it can be very loaded emotionally. And we understand that. And that means that even if you're working with an advisor or a broker, sometimes that person may not understand just how thorny this topic is for you or for your family. If you would like some advice about your money stuff, and you'd like that advice without judgment and you'd like that advice without a sales pitch, we are the place for you. Because here at Jill on Money, we don't really care about what happened in the past. We just want to help you with your next best decision. So if you have a financial question, something that's cooking around in there, and I know a lot of this comes up around tax season. So again, this is the time where you're thinking about your money as you go through all these statements. Maybe you're reconsidering some relationships with advisors. We would love to hear from you. Just go to the website, jillonmoney.com, click the Contact Us button, and we would be more than happy to help you out. Okay, let's get back to Mike and finish up. You said he's got $1.2 million.
Right.
He needs to be able to access some of that money. What do you think we need to pull from the portfolio at this point for the caregiver? Like, we need to have some money that's in cash immediately. So that's number one, right?
Yep.
So how much do we need in cash to help with the expenses of maintaining your father-in-law's lifestyle and keeping him well cared for?
Yeah, the track record is he's been pulling out about $10,000 every 3 or 4 months. His pension handles most of it, but then there's taxes and other things that have to be taken care of. So that's the track record right now.
All right, so let's say he needs 50 grand a year right now, and let's even say 60, because you know what? I don't know. I sort of feel like care will only become more expensive. Thank God that he has saved all this money and he can finance all of his needs. I mean, what an amazing thing, really, to consider that. So that's number one. So what I would suggest is that right now, you said there's not a lot of cash in there. So I would almost immediately have a couple $100,000 in cash right now, because I think that you want to have at least 2 years in cash. That's 120. And then you probably want to have a little extra just because, he may need more care. Something may happen and he might need that. Obviously, he no longer needs to be 80% in stocks. And even if he was like a killer, kind of investor. And, frankly, it hasn't hurt him in the last few years, and certainly not in the last decade, to be a playa, and he's got more money, but that has to be taken care of. I think the big issue is, beyond this $1.2 million, is there any other asset? Did he own a home that needs to be sold? What else is happening?
Yeah, he has a life insurance policy. It's one of those policies from hell. It's an annuity that is wrapped with 4 mutual funds, right? We're too far into it, I think, to change it, because the kids will benefit from that. He does own free and clear a beautiful lake house that he lives in now, and that the caregiver lives downstairs. And I'm sure whoever sells it's going to do relatively well. One thing that we did do, just to be on the safe side, we took a look at his pension, which was about $5,500 a month, and then we shopped the general area for dementia care facilities, and we set up a bond ETF that would basically give him another $3,000 a month for the next 3 years if he needed it.
Oh, that's great. Fantastic. Couple of things. Of course, you have to leave this person. You may or may not be able to avoid the stupid $60 fee, but you need to transfer this money out, like lock, stock, and barrel. And the thing is that if there are proprietary funds in this account, they will be sold upon exit from the firm, because no other place is going to hold those funds. So immediately, you're going to probably have the number of funds like cut in half. All right. Then what I think needs to happen is, that would be okay with me, because that's probably going to be a bunch of cash is going to be available right there. And maybe what you want to do is think of a couple of things. One, if we're going to do this ourselves, what do we want this to look like? What's the portfolio really look like? You got the money, you have an ETF. That's part of the bond position that you have right now, right? Your bonds, you said, were 15%?
Right.
Okay. This account, is it a retirement account or is it non-retirement?
It's retirement.
Okay, great. Because there's no capital gains to worry about.
Right.
So perfect. So what I would say is this: of the $1.2 million, he should be, maybe he could be 50% in stocks, 40% would be fine. I almost would just like kind of see where things settle. I would have at least half of the money in cash and bonds. The American funds, you see, since you've already paid for those funds, I don't want you to get out of them, because they're actually really decent investments once you have swallowed the fee. And he has, right? Yep. So wherever you move this account, You got to make sure they'll accept those American funds because I don't want you to get out of them because you've already paid the freight to get in. Mark, do you think that Schwab and Fidelity, I'm pretty sure that they will allow American funds on their platforms. And then when you get there, I guess the other question is, do you want there to be an advisor associated with the account? Now, obviously, if it's a Schwab or, you could use their intelligent portfolio service. You could certainly use Fidelity has that kind of thing. You could check out Vanguard, which has the personal service advisor. You can get advice for 0.3, 0.4% a year. And that's a heck of a lot better than 2%.
Yeah, we're with Schwab ourselves, but we're not trying to impose that on the family. But we asked both Schwab and Fidelity, could we transfer in kind most of these funds? And you're right, almost all of the other ones they will take.
That's great. So I think I would make that transfer. Your brother-in-law is going to have to find his spine. And he has to remember that as the power of attorney, he has got to execute this. And he has to do this because it's the right thing for his father. And, if he decides to stay with this woman, that's his problem. I can't be bothered by his, nonsense and his emotional attachment to someone who's screwed my father. But that's okay. Whatever. Let's leave that for him and his shrink. For you guys, you really have to put the pressure on. And by the way, I would be happy to talk to your brother-in-law. We should bring him on and be like, what's up, dude? Why are you being such a wimp? And the easiest way to get around this so you don't, maybe he's super conflict avoidant, which is possible. Here's how you do it. You guys all draft a letter. And you draft the letter and you say, Dear Jenny, you don't say this because you want to say it, like, thanks for nothing. Bye. You say, thank you so much for your years of service to our father. We very much appreciate it in acting as the durable power of attorney. Yeah, I'm sure she has a copy on file. We have decided to move our relationship elsewhere. Transfer forms have already been submitted. Thank you so much for your assistance. Goodbye. That's it. And you can also say, please do not contact us about this matter. Our decision is made. Because that way you don't get her calling your brother-in-law being like, why are you leaving? And if he wants to stay with her, he's got to be firm and say, I can't talk to you about my father anymore. Like, that's the deal. And that's a family decision. Thank you so much. And that's that. But you got to get out of this thing. You got to get out of this relationship. All that being said, yes to the move, yes to the putting some money in cash and bonds. And look, is it okay to have some equity exposure? Probably. But if you want, you could stay in the American funds family, right? So let's just say you had a big, large growth American funds position. And you say, you know what? We don't really want to be 50-50. We really think what's better is to be like 60% safe stuff and 40% equity. You can move 10% of the American funds into the American fund fixed income fund. But, you should stay in that environment, again, because you've paid the price already. If you are like Mike and you've got some questions, head to the website, JillOnMoney.com. And don't forget that you have got to sign up for the free weekly newsletter every single Friday. Mark does a great job. Really interesting stuff. So check it out. JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. Have you checked out all the great content on the website? I mean, it's great. Go there. Go to JillOnMoney.com and click the Contact Us button if you've got a question. But there's so much great stuff. And yes, of course, I'm biased. I write all the stuff that's on the blog. And we've got all of our other shows. We've got the Eye on Money podcast. We've got the Jill on Money podcast. We've got videos. We've got the resources section. There's so much there. why don't you take advantage of it? It's so easy to do. JillOnMoney.com. All right, let's get to another one of our listeners. It is Diane from California, who is joining us from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is Banking Reimagined. What's in your wallet? Hi, Diane. How can we help you out?
Well, I'm 67. My husband is 66, and we are retired. And for right now, we're doing really well. Plenty of income, no financial pressures, and that's a good thing. But me being who I am, I'm always concerned about the future. So I'm thinking, okay, we're good now, but I'm looking at galloping inflation. I'm looking at an uncertain world, and I'm thinking, do we have enough? Was our planning sufficient? We're good now, but what about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? So I just wanted objective observer, whose opinion I value, to kind of look at our situation and either say, oh my gosh, you have completely lost your mind and none of this makes any sense, or, you're on a good path and you'll still be okay in 20 years, or something in between.
Okay, I can do that. And Mark is also listening with his CFP ears as well. So, Diane, you're 67 and 66. So You're both retired. Tell us about the income that you are receiving. Let's start with the simple stuff. Right now, how about your Social Security?
Let's see, my Social Security is $1,881 a month, and my husband's is $2,500 a month.
What other sources of income do you have?
Probably 90% of our net worth is tied up in real estate. And
wow.
I'm really, really glad that we did that. Jill, I've always loved real estate. I love the tangibility of it. I love the fact that you can touch it, you can see it. We do have some retirement accounts in stocks and bonds, mutual funds, that sort of thing. But I have always been drawn to real estate. And so early on in our marriage, we started acquiring rental real estate. And so now we have, about almost $5 million in real estate. So I can break that down for you if you'd like.
Hold on a second. Mark, you see, this is where we need some sort of like sounder, which is cue the hate mail.
I don't know if this will garner hate mail because it's not stocks, it's not cash, it's in real estate.
Of the $5 million, is that all the rental, or is there is a principal included in that? Is there a principal residence?
The principal is included in that, and we own all of it outright except for our primary residence. We do still have a mortgage on that, but everything else is free and clear.
Let's take the primary out of it. So the primary is worth how much?
$2 million.
And that has how much of a mortgage?
$555.
And what's the interest rate?
3.75.
So then that leaves me $3 million in rental properties, right?
Yes.
Great. And I cannot believe that's free and clear. That's wild. Near you, do you manage it? Like, how do you work this?
We found out early on that a good property manager is worth their weight in gold. Oh my gosh, that's money that we spend every month, and we're happy to do it because it just takes so much of the day-to-day minutia of managing properties out of our laps. And when the water heater blows up at 2 a.m, we don't even get a phone call. A good property manager is essential in my mind.
Fantastic. So if you look at your cash flow after the property manager, what does it break down to on that $3 million?
I can give you the monthly income on each of the properties, and then
let's do it. And we can do the adding. Mark, get ready to put your calculator to work. See, sometimes I like to cue him like that, so I don't have to do it. Okay, so let's do each. How many properties comprise $3 million?
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6. Wow.
Yeah.
6 properties. Give us the list. How much each one?
3 condos that rent for about $1,600 each a month. The HOA fees on each of those, which is about $300 a month. We have a single family home that rents for $3,100 a month. Mm-hmm. No HOA, that's free and clear. Mm-hmm. We have an industrial condo, which my husband uses for his little sideline business. So there's no rental income. It's just part of our net worth in real estate. Mm-hmm. And then happily, we own half of a commercial industrial building in Las Vegas. The other half is owned by my husband's brother. It's a triple net lease, which is the best thing on the entire planet. The lease on that is $12,600 a month, and my husband gets half of that, so $6,300.
Holy crap. And that's the net, right? So when people, okay. So when you said, just want to make sure I understood this, like the 1,600 times 3, it's 300 HOA for each of the units, right?
Correct.
Okay, I got it. So it's really 1,300 times 3. I got it. Hey, I can do math with the best of them. Mark, do you have our total for our rental income net of those HOA fees?
If I did it correctly, it's about 13,300.
That's a lot of money.
It is. It is. And as you say, it sounds almost absurd to say, oh my gosh, do we have enough? And Jill, as I say, for right now, we're fine. But
but wait a second. How much money are you spending?
I tallied up all of our expenses and it came to $8,000 a month.
And that's everything. That's not just COVID spending. That's like, real money. Okay.
Yes, that's our fixed expenses. It's our discretionary, and also the $1,000 a month that we are paying on my husband's industrial condo where he's running his business. The HOA fee there, the electric and the cable for his little business site.
You got some grown kids, or you?
We
no
don't.
Kids. Everyone who's listening, do you know why there's so much money here? There's no kids that are sopping it up, because I'm only kidding you. We'll get back to Diane's question in just a second during the break. Again, very easy. Go to JillOnMoney.com, bookmark that site. It's where everything lives. All the content lives right there. JillOnMoney.com. Very easy. Questions? Hit the contact us button. Okay, we will be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. Let's get back to Diane in California. And you also, just for fun, just tell us a little bit about, the money that you have that's in investments, just for the heck of it.
Yeah, it totals about $2.3 million, and it's broken out. We have a big cash position, almost $1 million, because we sold 2 of our rental properties last year. Jill, we're really trying to simplify our lives as we get older. And we had 2 properties that we'd owned for years. They were older properties. They were maintenance intensive, and they still had mortgages. And we got to the point where we said, let's just sell them. We're not going to 1031 into another property.
Yeah.
We're going to sell them, pay the taxes, and whatever's left over is ours to spend. So that was almost $1 million right there. And then there's a couple of IRAs at Vanguard with index funds and a pretty heavy cash position there as well. We're rather risk adverse, as you can see.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, you took the risk a long time ago, and it's paid off. I'll tell you that much.
Right. That's right. And then we've got a couple of Fidelity IRAs, a small Roth IRA at Fidelity, some I-bonds, miscellaneous stuff that I piled together at the 2.3 million figure.
Let's just have fun for a second.
Sure.
Okay. Let's just say that the real estate market collapses.
Yes.
It's not going to collapse in half, but let's say it did. Let's say the value of the real estate, instead of being 3 million, goes to 1.5 million.
Yep.
And let's just say that all of a sudden the income also drops. Probably wouldn't drop in half, but let's just say that you go from 13 grand to, I don't know, the Las Vegas lease is the big part of it. And how long is that lease?
It still has a little over 2 years to run, and the tenant has been there for, 10 years. They signed a 5-year lease, and then they did a 5-year extension. We have no reason to think that they won't do that again. But even if they don't, we're okay with that.
All right. I mean, like, honestly, let's just say that you go from 13,000 to, I don't know, 7,500, just for wacky craziness. And let's say that all of that is happening amid a huge stock market crash where you're 2.3 million, well, really 1.3 million, because we know you have $1 million in cash, turns into, I don't know, 500 grand for a while. You know,
Okay.
it just gets lops off there.
Yep.
So now I'm still going to tell you that you're fine. Absolutely fine. Because even if, and it is so highly unlikely that your rental income goes from over 13,000 to 7,500. But again, let's pretend it does. You have 7,500. You've got 2 Social Security checks. You have $1 million in cash to kind of soothe your soul as we get through whatever this horrible thing, these like multiple bubbles explode at once. You're fine. You are fine. There is nothing that you need to worry about at all. I think the Las Vegas property is sort of a unique sort of standalone.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, if the 3 condos or the single family, if any of this becomes onerous, there is a great case to be made that you pay the taxes and you move on. And when you sold that property, those 2 properties that were sort of the pain in the ass properties,
Yes.
were you surprised at like, wow, this is like heavy duty taxes because of all that depreciation you had to recapture? Or were you like, okay, that's fine?
We were definitely in the okay, that's fine category. It was a lot of money, and nobody enjoys writing a big check to the IRS and another big check to the Franchise Tax Board here in California.
Mm-hmm.
But once those checks were written and we saw what was left, that was ours to do with as we please. Nobody else is going to be able to say, well, you tried to do a 1031 and it failed. And, no, there was no pressure. And that money just sits there happily in the bank,
It's
awaiting
a beautiful thing.
direction.
So I just want to ask you one other question about the 1031. So for those of you guys listening, 1031, we've had questions about this because people who own real estate have been and have owned for a long time. There's an embedded tax liability that exists with a lot of rental property. So there's a part of the IRS code, section 1031, that allows you to take all of the taxable gain that you have and defer it until a later date by buying another property. Now, I've been hearing about folks in your situation who are using a 1031 exchange, but also doing it with a more diversified holding instead of going one property to another. So did you consider doing that Delaware Corporation 1031 where you sort of get fractional ownership in many properties? Or were you like, let's pay the tax and move on?
Definitely, let's pay the tax and move on. We briefly considered a traditional 1031, but Jill, that real estate market, and especially the commercial real estate market, because we were looking to perhaps buy another commercial piece of property, is crazed, absolutely crazed. There is no inventory. And the last thing you want to do is get started in a 1031 and then have to buy something with a gun to your head because the IRS regulations on 1031, the timeline is so stringent, so strict, and it cannot be extended for any reason. We just didn't want that pressure. We're trying to simplify, not drive ourselves crazy. And in my mind, if there's a problem that can be solved with money, that's an easy problem to solve.
Okay, one more segment before the end of the hour. If you've got a financial question, the website, JillOnMoney.com. That is your answer for everything. We will be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. Let's answer a quick question from listener Stephanie, who says, my mom died in January of 2020. Oh, I'm sorry. And now my sister is buying my mother's house, and I will receive $60,000 after the transaction. I'm not sure what to do with the money. Well, okay, let's go back to our big three. What is the big three? The big three is what I always turn to as the financial foundation, right? So it is number one, do you have an emergency reserve fund of 6 to 12 months of your living expenses? Number two, have you paid down all of your outstanding consumer debt, meaning credit cards or maybe an auto loan or even a student loan? And then third, are you maximizing your retirement plan contributions? If not, you may want to boost those contributions and use some of this money to live on. Okay, so let's say you've got those three things covered. Is it possible that some of this money could be used for, say, an extra contribution to an IRA or a Roth IRA? Do you have some kids that you need to help get through school? Is it worthwhile opening up a 529 plan? And if all of these things sound a little bit more than you need, perhaps just a plain old brokerage account will do. And the way you would do that is you'd go to any of the big companies that you hear us talk about all the time. Maybe that's Vanguard or Charles Schwab or, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, TD Ameritrade, any of these places. And what you want to do is you just want to have a pretty simple account, a brokerage account with a couple of maybe 3 index funds and call it a day. I don't know much more about you. If you need some help, we'd love for you to follow up with us so we can help guide you a little more specifically. But I think that's kind of the direction that we always go in when you have some sort of windfall. Okay, that's the end of the first hour. Next hour, we are going to talk about the metaverse. Jill on Money. We will be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we have a great guest this hour. His name is Jeff Bacalar, a friend of mine. He's actually been on the program before. Jeff and I met when he was at CNET hosting the 404 podcast. Some of you heard us on that podcast together. Jeff is now the head of content and strategy at Giant Bomb. And I wanted to get in touch with him to help us start to understand what's going on in the universe of tech. And when I talk about the universe, we don't call it the universe anymore. We call it a metaverse. So right now, we are delighted to have Jeff Bacalar join us from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? And we'll talk to Jeff about gaming first, because that's really his beat. Here's the first part of our interview with Jeff Bacalar. Jeff, you are in the part of the world right now that we need to pick your brain. Okay. So first of all, there have been some huge deals that have gone on that really put gaming in the spotlight. Is gaming where the excitement is around the next iteration of our technological advances?
I think it's a big part of it. It has a majority share of that momentum, and it has for a while. I just think a lot of lines are starting to blur, and when most people take a look at this and they try and understand it in a way that they are familiar, it always sort of defaults back to video games being the driving force for all this. So when you see these, massive acquisitions like, Microsoft taking up Activision Blizzard, it is obviously driven by games and gaming first and foremost. What the sort of like aftershocks of that kind of deal look like, we'll have to sort of wait and see. We have a lot of predictions about what that's going to look like. But yes, I think games has been and has been for many decades the first and foremost form of preferred entertainment for a huge demographic. And I think it's starting to catch up in a way that if you are somehow have your finger on the pulse of contemporary entertainment, it is impossible to have that conversation without gaming being the first thing you bring up. It eclipses pretty much every other entertainment medium around.
Yeah, and I want you to just speak to that a little bit in that some of the numbers are kind of daunting. How much money does this industry really make? I mean, I feel like gaming, people don't understand it. Like old farts like me don't understand until I heard this stat, which is like gaming is making so much money as an industry that it like blows away so many other forms of entertainment, like movies, for example. So how lucrative is it?
It's crazy. Think about what Disney spent on Marvel, right?
Yeah.
For that deal. I think it was like $4 billion.
Yep.
Just for Marvel. And, this deal comes around last week and it is just so many times that and that's just for one publisher. I mean, it really is this wildly huge and international phenomenon, right? It is not just, completely exclusive to the United States. Gaming is everywhere. It is a universal language, and it is the thing that commands the attention of the majority of people aged, 6 to 50. That is who is attracted to this sort of thing. And beyond that, I think I remember when PlayStation 4 was first coming out, Sony used to love this talking point that their average customer was 40 years old. And that was in 2012, around then when PlayStation 4 came out. I think it was 2014 maybe. It covers everything. It transcends all demographics. It is this universal thing without a doubt.
So just for if you guys weren't keeping track of this, Microsoft paid almost $69 billion for Activision Blizzard.
That's it. just a little 69 bill, no problem.
Rounding error, no biggie.
In 2009, Disney bought Marvel for $4 billion. And you think Marvel, you're like, oh my God, they bought all that X-Men and Spider-Man and all that. And then this comes along and it just dwarfs it. It's unbelievable.
And then, and that came right after Take-Two Interactive paid almost $13 billion to buy Zynga.
Right, which was a very shocking amount of money, and of course, held the very temporary title of being the largest acquisition in games, and then
for 5 minutes.
So
let me ask you this: it's one thing to say, "Oh, I'm playing a game on my phone," which, obviously, I get that. So, can you talk a little bit about, how it has evolved from playing on a console to playing on your phone to now playing in this alternate universe known as the metaverse? What is this all about?
Well, let's tap the brakes with the metaverse for a second, or just that word, just for a second, because there's a lot to answer with the first part of the question. So games obviously has evolved out of the arcades into the home console world, and now in the very online connected world. And once consoles, had Ethernet ports on them and Wi-Fi radios in them, that was sort of the cat getting out of the bag there a little bit. We've now, gone from playing with your friends online all over the world, speaking with them, and now we're in a place where we are streaming games, and there are personalities that cultivate a following and an audience on platforms like Twitch, where they have an interactive community that watches them play video games live, which is a huge, in my opinion, still underappreciated / valued part of the landscape as it exists right now. Mm-hmm. So that is the sort of trajectory that the connected world of online gaming has taken. Now, I balked a little bit when you brought up the sort of metaverse thing, because the metaverse, or the idea of the metaverse, just to be clear, the metaverse is not like a tangible thing or even an idea that anyone can coherently and completely / thoroughly explain. Mm-hmm. It is more just a concept than an actual thing. Gaming is just a really small slice of that bigger pie of what people mean when they say the word metaverse. Metaverse is a very difficult thing for people to wrap their heads around because it is not really a thing in itself. It is a catch-all phrase that is used to describe a hyper-connected virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality sort of world that doesn't really cohesively exist anywhere. I think it's a really shiny sort of object for, VCs to put on their PowerPoint presentations and kind of say like, yeah, I've got a metaverse strategy. Like this is where all the money's going. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of its purpose at the moment, is to kind of raise capital and get people excited about a thing that no one, universally understands.
We'll get back to our interview with Jeff Bakalar in just a moment. If you've got a question about the metaverse, I don't blame you. It's quite confusing. Just go to JillOnMoney.com, click the Contact Us button, and we will try to help you out. I'm not sure I understand it all just yet, but we'll get to it, okay? We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are continuing our conversation with Jeff Bakalar. It's all about the metaverse today, gang.
At its core, when you talk about metaverse, it is basically the convergence of all of these connected little singular items coexisting on a universal platform. So when I say that, I know that's such a vague and ridiculous explanation. But that is really what people are talking about. It is basically finding the common ground with people's online presence, whether that is your presence in video games, in shopping, in all of your online social interactivities, right? All your social platforms. Is there a way to make all of these moving parts fall in sync together and be basically like the virtual reality version of yourself? And that's kind of what people are reaching towards when they discuss something like the metaverse.
Mark, did you understand that?
No, I'm trying to stop my head from spinning.
I know, me too.
Don't let it spin too hard, because to be completely honest with you guys, it is a lot of it is sort of fluff. Facebook changes their name to Meta, right? And all of a sudden it changes the way the world looks at these types of, virtual spaces. So there, like I said, there really is no bulletproof definition for what the quote unquote metaverse is, but it is a convergence of dozens of ideas.
If I am thinking about this, and when someone says, oh, it's the metaverse, like you put your headset in and like you're not immersed in a game, but you're immersed in a workplace. I don't really get that. Like, I really don't, because I'm trying to figure out when someone says this is how we're going to have meetings. This is virtual meetings. How does that differ than being like on a Zoom? Like, what's happening that's different? I have an avatar that says, here's Jill in her, in her radio wear, not in her TV wear, and is in the same, but like I'm choosing what I want to look like. I have this thing, I'm in a meeting, and what am I doing? Am I wearing a headset, some sort of VR headset of some sort? Like, what's happening for me?
I think the easiest way to understand it, from the point of view that you just described, is right now we touch the quote unquote metaverse in a dozen different ways. The problem is that it's all fragmented. You have Twitter, you have a Zoom presence, you have Discord, you have YouTube, you have all these different sort of platforms. The metaverse kind of is this utopian convergence of all of these things. where there is somehow a magical way that all of these things stop being so off platform and fragmented and somehow coexist in harmony. That is really like the sort of idea that some people float when it comes to talk about the metaverse. So it's not really a thing that will one day just come out. It's not like a product. It's not something that is being worked on and will one day just launch. It is the idea that every platform will have its own sort of integrated universe that is not where you have to log into a thing or sit down and turn an application on and run a program, right? It is the blurring of a line for a lot of your interactivity with stuff and making things feel less engaged and more natural. Because right now everything is very fragmented. You have to log in and out of things. You have to keep track of 1,000 different passwords. You have, I do think like 50 years from now, we will look back. Well, we won't, but there will be people who look back and they say, oh my God, the internet was such a mess. Like, how did they do it? How did they deal with all that stuff? And I think when you hear terms like metaverse, you hear terms like Web3, it is this almost intangible future that we are trying to grasp for, where like everything just works. And right now, spoiler, not a lot of stuff just works. It's sort of there and it's great if it works, but not everything works maybe the way we wished it would.
What is it that we need to know about when people say Web 3.0? What was Web 1.0? I get that. That's the beginning.
Sure.
2.0 is like, okay, Facebook, Google, like they control the internet basically,
yeah,
right?
2.0 is like, hey, we can put buttons on sites now. We could put like, flashy, we can have like nice styling and sort of consistent packaging of a site. And 3.
And but wait, and also 2.0 is that like we can kind of harness all of these disparate pieces, with these like weirdo protocols and like sort of bring it together and create a more cohesive experience for the person, for the user. Is that fair?
Yes. Two was like, hey, we can put products on the internet. And when I say a product, like a service, right? Like eBay, we can make an eBay work. We can make a YouTube work. We can make an Amazon work on this thing and people can spend money. And now, we have an economy there. 3 enters the world of blockchain and cryptocurrencies and tries to find a common ground with coexisting with all of these technologies and making the web a much more automated and productive place.
But the way it's also been described to me when we talk about 3.0 and we talk about, say, using the example of like, let's use blockchain, the technology that powers this idea that you don't have to have sort of a middleman. Is that fair to say?
I think a lot of the default catch-all explanations for Web3 is a sort of, look, the blockchain stuff gets brought up a lot with Web 3.0 because it's the trust in that technology being the driving force for a decentralized kind of internet. I personally, I don't think that's ever a truly achievable thing, but that is the spirit of what people are describing when they talk about Web3.
Yeah, and they also say that, they use this term DeFi, which is decentralized finance protocols, right? And they say, oh, isn't it great? Like now we can like just move money between us. The internet is this big, huge printing press, and there's going to be more, you're going to really know who owns what. And then I read an article today in the Wall Street Journal, headline, DeFi increasingly popular tool for laundering money, study finds.
Look, to be fair, yes, I agree with that criticism. To be fair, so is cash.
Absolutely. But that's why you can't go into a bank and say, that's why a bank has to report if you want to take more than $10,000 in or out of a bank.
Absolutely. We're still in the very much wild west of this moment. And I don't, claim to be a hyper pro crypto person either way. I do think blockchain technology in a vacuum, I think it is impressive stuff, and I think it's important. The way it's sort of being used right now and the kind of things that it gets let's just say, swept up in, feels like a much more temporary smash and grab, almost, pyramid scheme than what I think blockchain will inevitably be successfully used for.
What is it going to be successfully used for real?
I think what is attractive and interesting and intriguing about blockchain is the idea of having some kind of open source ledger for ownership and for tracking things on the internet. I think that is the most provocative aspect of it. Like the fact that you can somehow have this bulletproof, unhackable ledger that tracks transactions and whatever you want to apply that technology to me seems like a valuable thing to have on the internet. The way it's been used right now seems a little superficial. I think the potential for it, when it really starts to get used in a truly meaningful way, will democratize a lot of information and value. Without a doubt, in my opinion, blockchain is a part of our internet future. I think we have to get out of the sort of growing pains moment that we're in right now.
Okay, we're going for a quick break. Take a big stretch. You're going to need it. More when we return.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. We're heading back to the Capital One Bank virtual studios with our guest, Jeff Bakalar. What's the problem with the internet right now? I mean, I don't really care about the HTTP, like that's why I don't care about like the technology powering. The problem, it's a printing press. Like you can copy anything.
I was going to say the problem with the internet is that it has basically allowed information and newsmakers to become completely sort of like run amok and completely, influence a huge population of people based off of like disinformation and stuff that is simply not true.
Well, okay, but blockchain's not going to solve the problem of disinformation, is it?
Maybe.
How
look,
so?
Here's the thing: we might be too far gone. Number one, because
that's what I think.
Yeah, I think Pandora's box has been open for a little too long, where there's no kind of stuffing it back in. But the idea where blockchain could help is if anyone is left that cares about a reliable source, that is something I think blockchain could have an impact on.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I don't hold a lot of hope for that. I really don't.
Sure, because again, that will probably not be the most lucrative use of it.
Exactly.
And when it comes to how can we turn this into revenue, having a sort of like bulletproof source, using it as a bulletproof sourcing mechanism, maybe not the way it gets implemented in a meaningful way.
Right. I mean, because I sort of think like the problem, like if you're a musician, if you're a writer, if you're, trying to track down who owns this asset, that's the part that I think that having a way to specify who owns what and like technologically we can do that. I kind of get that. But
sure.
I don't get that, like, first of all, I think it's such garbage that the people who are like the crypto cheerleaders are all like, oh, there's going to be no middleman. But of course there's going to be a middleman because that's how they're going to make money. So someone's going to control that. So I don't buy that there's going to be no middleman. There was no middleman from, 1985 to 1994, let's say. And then all the middlemen and women got in there, right?
It does seem to be a supremely ambitious take that there will somehow never be intervention in any way or form. I don't know, the huge pillars of world commerce would have to shift dramatically for there to be an allowance of that sort of
exactly
change.
I don't think in our lifetime.
No, I don't know. Yeah.
And I get your point that, it would be nice if you didn't have the people out there who were unwilling to take responsibility for the Frankenstein monsters they created. Hello, Mark Zuckerberg. But, that's just where, that is where we are. So do you feel like there's any chance that this iteration of Web 3.0 could potentially change some of that or not?
Out of the gate, no. I think, like everything, it takes a really long time. Right now, it seems like some of the worst actors are at the helm. The idea that decentralization is somehow this, freeing up of everything, it's sort of not, it's not this airtight sort of pitch. And I think it's going to take a lot of figuring out before it is used in a way that pushes the progress in the right direction. So, there is so much chest pounding and so much emotional investment and monetary investment in what the possibilities are for technologies like blockchain that it's tough to see how it somehow just all falls into place out of the gate.
Yeah.
It's just not what we're seeing yet. But again, it is so nascent. It is so new. I'm still sort of on the fence about it. I'm not on the fence about it being a part of Web3 in the future of the internet. It absolutely will be.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have a positive effect? I think I'm still in the middle on.
God bless you. Mark, do you have any questions for Jeff while he's with us before he has to go and be a gaming professional?
Gaming addiction and screen time is a very real thing. How do you deal with that with your own son?
A lot of it is just being very aware of like what your child is doing. There are, automated mechanisms in place that you can take advantage of. All the console makers have tools that let you limit screen time and do that sort of stuff, but it has to be an interactive thing. You have to take control and learn about what they are doing. It's never been easier to kind of automate that process, but at the same time, there's definitely a responsibility to sort of, step in and kind of say, hey, like this is it. I mean, for my son, he has a limited amount of time to do it every week. And when he hits that time, he switches to something else and we make sure he does it. So I know that for some parents that might be, easier said than done, but that is sort of the sort of tool set that and routine that we've kind of tried to own and use in our day to day.
Mark, what else? When are we going to, how is Theo doing in his gaming career so far, as he approaches his third birthday?
No gaming. I mean, he loves his cartoons. He's got his handful of cartoons that that are his go-to. That's for sure. I don't know if video games is really much in his future. I'm not into it,
I think it's all about still striking a balance, right? Like when it's nice enough outside, like we have to play hockey. Like we know we're going to get driveway hockey in at some point, and it's finding that kind of balance. I'll say this, I think I have a slightly controversial take on TV versus video games, where I would almost prefer him to play a game than to watch a show. I know
really
he's learned to read better through playing video games, because the games that he wants to play, he has to read. He has to see what people are saying.
Could you possibly do it where he learns how to code?
Sure. I mean, look, very basic, even children's games are like the building blocks of coding. And, I think they do like an hour a week in school with basic coding. So understanding that language is definitely a part of the equation. I don't mind him watching cartoons and stuff like that, but I would almost rather him play something cerebral to build coordination and sort of, input-output kind of reflexes.
Well, thanks so much for Jeff's appearance. If you want to check his stuff out, we'll have a link to it in the show notes. Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that attempts to introduce different kinds of concepts to you, metaverse, for example, but also wants to answer your financial questions. Do you have a question that's percolating? Is there something going on for you that you're just trying to say, I just want to get this off my plate? If that's the case, why not let us worry about it for you? I mean, worry is probably a little bit of an overstatement. Although, Mark, I was thinking about one of our favorite listener interactions about a friend of ours who has had some financial problems and got into debt. And I actually had a bad dream about it. And so, yeah, I woke up this morning and I sent an email quickly and I haven't heard back. I'm worried about them. Do you think that they're going to be okay? I'm not sure I agree. I think that this could be the turning point for them. I'm not sure, but I don't know. Okay, let's do a question from Lisa, who writes, oh my God, the subject, have I botched my after-tax 401k contributions? Here's the message. In 2002, I rolled my after-tax 401k contributions into an IRA, not a Roth, a traditional IRA. Based on instructions I received from the plan administrator at the time, I believe that was the correct thing to do. Okay. My question now is, how do I view this account as I conduct my retirement planning? Okay, it's an IRA. And so the question is, will all of it be subject to a required minimum distribution? Will all of it be taxed upon withdrawal? Or does at least the original post-tax contribution get excluded so that it would not be taxed again? Is the growth just tax deferred like a regular IRA, or is there any way for it to be tax-free like a Roth IRA? Is there anything I can do with this account now? I am age 60 and I want to make sure that I have more favorable treatment of the account when I have to take distributions at age 72. Okay, so Mark, are you ready for this? I left the company in 2002. I took my 401k with me. I was designated a highly compensated employee during my employment there, so a portion of 401k contributions were after tax. Oh, interesting. I received 2 checks when I left. One was for pre-tax dollars that I deposited directly into a rollover IRA. The other was for after-tax dollars that I deposited directly into a separate traditional IRA. Listen to this. The original amount of the after-tax contribution was $26,800. The value of the account now is $141,000. So this is kind of interesting. I wonder where this account is held. Is there a possibility, Mark, that she can work with the custodian to recharacterize this account as a non-deductible IRA? That's number one. What do you think? Right. So I think that having it separated is a great argument to be able to say, I didn't do anything nefarious. I'm not trying to get one over on you. You know what I mean? Like that was important. No, there was no Roth 401k then. It was 2002. This is only 5 years after the Roth actually started. I think the Roth started in 97, if I recall, 97, 98, something like that. So I think you got to work with, this is what I would do. I would go to the custodian, explain the situation. And here's my bigger question. Can you just roll it into a Roth IRA right now? There's another question for you. I mean, that's what I would try to do. So I think work with a custodian. Let's see how that goes and then report back to us, because I'm interested in this one. This is one of those situations where you really didn't do anything wrong. You followed instructions. And so I think from my perspective, at least, and even from the IRS perspective, you are not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. You're not. It's just, this was like, I think, an early Roth mishap where you thought you did one thing, you didn't know you should do it some different way, and maybe in retrospect it would have been better had you like rolled it into a Roth, but maybe it wasn't as, the Roth wasn't as ubiquitous then, Mark. It really wasn't. I remember using a Roth early on for my then clients, and people were like, what is this thing? I don't want to do this. I need the tax deduction right now. So it wasn't used as widely because tax rates were higher. It wasn't quite as good a deal. So let us know how that goes and what you find out. I'm pulling for Lisa. Okay, if you've got a question about a non-deductible IRA, a deductible IRA, college funding, career planning, future funding of retirement, anything that's on your mind, just go to JillOnMoney.com, click the Contact Us button. We'll get your note. Don't forget to let us know if you would like to come on the air, because we love it when you come on the air. While you're on the website, don't forget to What is it, Mark? Oh, subscribe to the weekly newsletter. Of course, we really want Jill to stop talking about that weekly newsletter. So yes, subscribe to it. And when we get to a certain threshold, I'm hoping by July 1st that we get to a certain threshold, Mark. I don't know if we're there yet, but I won't be hawking it every single show, maybe every other show. Okay, JillOnMoney.com. That is the repository for all of our content. Check it out, bookmark it, and yes, sign up for the free weekly newsletter. We will be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. And before we break for the day, let's answer an email. This one is from Wendy, who writes, I recently engaged a financial planner and I paid $2,500. We spent the first call talking about my various accounts and she prepared a sheet outlining everything. We had a couple of subsequent calls and then she recommended some general categories that I should consider expanding into. For example, dividend-paying stocks and socially responsible investments. She answered my questions, and then I received an email to the effect of, so, we're all good? I said, what do you mean, all good? Where is my plan? So my question is it fair to expect a written game plan from a financial planner? Yes, absolutely. I love a written game plan. And in fact, if you don't have that game plan, I think it's very difficult to digest information just from a call. So absolutely, I would ask for a written game plan. I would ask for the specifics of the advice, the recommendations, especially anything that has to do with investments. I would want to know how much the investments are costing and all that. So more detail is better than less. So absolutely, please do ask for that. Okay, if you've got a question about financial advice or any other financial matter that's bubbling up these days for you, you just have to go to JillOnMoney.com, click on the Contact Us button, and we will field your question. Don't forget to check out our other programs. Our podcasts are Jill on Money and I on Money. Our music here at the program is composed by Joel Goodman. Mark Talercio is our executive producer. As always, we like to remind you to do something nice for someone else today. And the reason is that when you do that, it's going to make that person feel better, and it is also going to make you feel better. So, you're putting your hands metaphorically on someone's back. There's a lot of good juju in doing that. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with us. We really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.